My dear, you only loved the echo of me, not the silence I kept hidden. You don't know me, you just memorized the version that didn't cry. I warned you with my eyes. You punished me with your memory. Someday you'll hate me for surviving what I never told you. I became a stranger trying to protect you from the truth I carry. You fell in love with my disguise, then blamed me for the mask. I kept you safe by letting you hate me. If you ever knew my reasons, your heart would shatter. I left quietly because explaining would have burned us both. You only loved me when I didn't need forgiveness. You won't forgive me because you never really saw me. You saw betrayal. I saw a necessary sacrifice. I hid my scars so well, you thought I had none. My silence wasn't cruel, it was my final act of love. You'll never know how many nights I chose your peace over mine. If you knew what I buried, you'd bury me too. I loved you enough to ruin your image of me. My truth was too wild for the love you offered. I wasn't selfish. I was protecting you from me. I'll live as your villain if it means you sleep peacefully. I vanished so you wouldn't unravel. Forgive me? You never even looked closely enough to understand me. I stayed silent because honesty would have destroyed you. I gave you the illusion you needed. You only miss me because you never truly met me. You'll hate me when you realize how much I hid. If truth were flowers, mine had thorns. You wouldn't forgive me if you saw my reasons clearly. I traded my innocence to protect your illusion. You left because I didn't fit the fantasy. I never asked you to forgive what you'd never comprehend. You think I abandoned you. I was saving you. If my love had a voice, you would have drowned in it. You call it betrayal. I call it mercy. I left to keep you from becoming like me. You fell in love with the part I hated most. You needed a hero. I was born a wound. You'll resent me forever because I never lied well enough. You won't forgive the fire I became to protect you. You loved my silence until it walked away. You wouldn't forgive what you never took time to learn. I never wanted your forgiveness, only your understanding. You don't know me, only the version you dreamed up. One day you'll curse me for surviving you. I disappeared to avoid explaining the storm inside. You'll call me heartless when I was just breaking alone. Your version of me is too clean to survive truth. Forgiveness needs understanding. You chose blindness. I gave up my soul so you could keep yours whole. You'll never know what I had to become to love you. You left me in the fire I lit to warm you. You don't know me because knowing me would have changed everything. You won't forgive me because you'd have to forgive yourself too. You think I'm the villain, but I gave you the ending you needed. I gave you distance so you could hold your fantasy. You won't forgive me for surviving your silence. You saw a monster. I was only bleeding. I held my truth back so you could sleep. The version of me you hate is the one I created to protect you. I didn't lie. I just chose silence over devastation. You won't forgive what your heart can't explain. I whispered goodbye in a language you never learned. My absence was my final apology. You never knew the cost of my quiet love. I turned into a storm to drown my secrets. You only miss the mask I wore to survive us. I wasn't cruel. I just ran out of places to hide. If I told you everything, you'd unlove me instantly. You hate me for ending what was killing me. I faded so you could shine. You'll never forgive the silence that saved you. You remember my escape, not the pain that caused it. You loved who I pretended to be. If you knew the full story, you'd cry for me. You won't forgive me because I remind you of your shadows. My love was never wrong, just misunderstood. I left behind the version of me you adored. I chose to be your stranger instead of your burden. I was your angel in disguise. You only saw the smoke. If this touched your soul, don't scroll, like, comment your favorite quote, and subscribe for more. You won't forgive me for what you never took time to feel. You loved my silence until it became absence. You thought I was cold, but I was burning silently. I walked away to avoid becoming the villain in your story. You fell for my calm, not my chaos. You only ever saw my smile, not what it hid. You'll hate me when you find out what I didn't say. I gave you peace at the cost of my own. You'll never forgive the ghost I had to become. You believed your version and refused my truth. I was never your enemy, just your unanswered question. I let you go before I drowned us both. You won't forgive me because your ego needs a villain. I became your silence because words couldn't carry this pain. You erased me because I didn't fit your fantasy. You called me fake, but I was just hiding my wounds. You will never forgive the version of me that chose truth over performance. I wore silence so you wouldn't hear my pain screaming. You wanted pretty lies, not my shattered truth. You saw me leaving, not the 100 times I stayed. I was drowning next to you, and you only watched the surface. You called me selfish for choosing my survival. I became your memory because I couldn't survive your reality. You'll resent me forever because I refused to break your illusion. I turned away because you weren't ready for my truth. You loved a version of me I outgrew to stay alive. I was dying quietly while you adored the mask. My silence was the only safe goodbye I had. You don't want to forgive. You want to forget I ever existed. I vanished to stop you from burning with me. I could have explained, but you never asked with real eyes. You can't forgive what your pride refuses to understand. You worshipped my peace, never asked where it came from. You don't know me because you never stayed past your comfort. I left so your memory wouldn't be stained by my damage. You only remember me when you're lonely, not when I was. My real story would ruin the lie you loved. You don't want my truth. You want your fantasy to feel right. I kept your image clean by making mine unlovable. I didn't ghost you, I set myself free. I looked like betrayal when all I gave was protection. You couldn't see me through the lens of your ego. You'll hate me more once you grow into the truth. You couldn't forgive the real me, only the version that smiled. My love was inconvenient to your narrative. I left like a villain, but I carried your salvation. You don't know me because knowing me would have changed you. You chose fantasy, I chose healing. I stopped explaining when I realized you weren't listening. You thought I was cold. I was just frozen in fear. You won't forgive the version of me that had to save herself. I refused to bleed for someone who never noticed I was cut. You knew my laugh, not the ache behind it. I let you go so I could meet myself again. You blame me because your heart isn't ready to be honest. I destroyed your illusion because it was destroying me. I left before your love became a punishment. You want closure from a door you refuse to open. I became silence because my truth was never safe with you. You saw me breaking and still asked for more. I didn't change. You never saw me clearly. You only miss me because I stayed quiet. My silence was the most honest thing I ever gave you. You left me to become the apology I never got. I became your past to avoid becoming your regret. I stopped begging to be understood by closed hearts. You'll never know the nights I cried instead of calling you. I loved you so loudly, and you still heard nothing. You wanted devotion. I needed air. You remembered what I did, not why I did it. I gave you truth in a world that rewarded lies. You buried me in a memory I never chose. You only see the sin, not the sacrifice. I refused to bleed where I was already broken. You won't forgive the part of me you failed to love. I had to become my own rescue. You remember my exit, not the thousand silent stays. You judged my choices without living my pain. I didn't disappear. I outgrew the silence between us. You worshipped the version of me that cost me everything. I left to save myself from becoming unrecognizable. You saw me crumble and called it coldness. My distance was mercy in disguise. You'll forgive everyone but the one who told you the truth. I kept my love quiet. You only heard the silence. You didn't want love. You wanted submission. I was honest. You called it cruelty. You saw a ghost where there once was a fire. I set fire to the future we built on lies. You won't forgive me because your memory edits the pain. I didn't run. I crawled away in silence. You thought I was selfish. I was just finally breathing. You were blind to everything I bled silently for. I gave you peace at the cost of my identity. You left when my soul became louder than my skin. I became the villain in a story I wrote to survive. You wanted poetry. I gave you the raw wound. I left so I could finally be seen by myself. You mistook my silence for absence. You won't forgive me because your ego can't admit what you missed. I stopped explaining the ache you never bothered to understand. I outgrew the love that made me invisible. You feared my truth more than my absence. I loved you more than I loved my comfort. You never saw me, just the version you sculpted for your pride. I was loyal to a fault. You punished me for the fracture.